Paris, silent streets.
When I came to Paris, I thought my biggest problem would be finding a job and a place to live, but I was wrong. My real problem was my neighbors. The apartment I had rented was old, a narrow building with thin walls. Our apartment was right next to a family that I soon realized was not normal. People were always coming and going in their house. At all hours of the day and night, different people showed up. Some didn't even stay for a few minutes. But the strangest thing was the silence. With all those people coming and going, we almost never heard any sound from inside their rooms. No laughter, no arguments, not even the sound of a child's footsteps. One evening, when I was coming back from work, I saw her on the stairs. She was a woman, around 45 years old. She had several heavy packages in her hands and was struggling to carry them. I paused for a moment. I don't know why, but I felt I should help her. I said, "I'm your neighbor, let me help you." She looked at me for a moment. Her look was strange, like she knew me. She smiled quietly and said, "Thank you, Michael." I was surprised. I had never told her my name. When I carried the things to her door, she said, "You helped me. I will return the favor." That day, I talked to her for the first time. Her name was Celine. She said she was 46. Her face had a strange calmness, like she had lived with something for years that others didn't know about. The more we talked, the more I felt close to her, maybe too close. When we got to their door, she paused, opened the door, and said, "If you want, come in. I just made coffee." I knew maybe I shouldn't accept, but something inside me said this meeting was not just a simple visit, and I went inside. When I stepped into the house, the first thing that caught my attention was the smell. Not the normal smell of a home. It smelled like warm Eastern perfumes mixed with old wood and a little incense. Soft yellow light came from the wall lamps and made the space calm and almost dreamlike. Unlike the outside of the building, the house was very neat and beautiful. The walls were covered with classical paintings. Most were portraits of women with eyes that seemed to follow you. A dark red carpet covered the living room floor. My footsteps made almost no sound on it. For a moment, I felt I hadn't entered a normal home. It felt more like a theater stage or an old memory. Celine said, "Make yourself comfortable, Michael. You're not a stranger here." She took my coat and hung it up, then went to the kitchen to get the coffee. I stayed alone in the living room. I walked around. My eyes fell on a narrow hallway that led to the rooms. One of the doors was half open. It looked like a bedroom. But the last door in the hallway was different. A dark wooden door with a large metal lock. The lock was on the outside. I stopped. Without thinking, I moved my ear closer. And that's when my heart started racing. I heard a very faint sound, not clear, more like slow movement or breathing. At that moment, I was sure Celine was not the only one living in this house. The sound of the front door opening brought me back. I turned around. A man entered, around 50 years old, with a calm face and graying hair. His eyes were sharp and careful, like he was measuring everything. His face was calm, but strangely, when he saw me, he didn't look surprised. He smiled. He said, "We have a guest?" Celine answered from the kitchen. "This is Michael, our next-door neighbor. He helped me with the groceries." The man came forward and reached out his hand. "Welcome, Michael. I'm Antoine." He asked a few normal questions, where in America I was from, how long I had been in Paris, but his eyes stayed fixed on my face, like he was looking for something more than just my answers. Celine went back to the kitchen to get the coffee. A short silence fell between us. Suddenly, Antoine moved closer and said quietly, "Do you like my wife?" I froze. I thought I had misheard. I said, Excuse me? He repeated the same question, this time even softer. Do you like Celine, Michael? I looked at him in surprise, but there was something in his eyes, like he already knew the answer and just wanted me to admit it. A few moments later, he started talking. He said Celine was a kind woman, lonely, and needed attention. Then he smiled and said, "Consider this house your home. Come anytime you want, even without asking." At that moment, I heard the cups from the kitchen, but I wasn't paying attention to the sound anymore. Only one thought was going through my mind. Why would a man say such things about his wife to a stranger? A few days passed since that night. I tried to convince myself that everything was normal, but it wasn't. From that day on, I felt like someone was watching me. Not directly, not clearly. More like that house, even when I wasn't inside it, was still thinking about me. A week later, on a rainy evening, someone knocked on my door. When I opened the door, a girl was standing there. Around 17 or 18 years old. She had big eyes and her brown hair fell over her shoulders. In her hand was a plate of bread, covered with a white cloth. For a moment, she just looked at me, like she wasn't sure if she should speak. She said, "Hello, I'm Lucy. Mom asked me to bring this for you." She held out the plate. I thanked her and asked her to come in. She hesitated but took a few steps inside. Her eyes looked around my room with curiosity, more carefully than a normal teenager. I said, "You're Celine's daughter?" She nodded, "Yes." "How old are you, Lucy?" 17. She paused a little and then asked, "You came from America, right?" I said, "Yes, from Boston." She smiled and said, "I've seen Boston in movies. Red brick streets. I like it." Her words were simple, but during the whole time she was there, I understood one thing. She was afraid of something. Not of me, of saying certain things. A few minutes later, she suddenly said she had to go back. Before leaving, she asked quietly, "You're our next-door neighbor, right?" I said, "Yes." She looked at me for a few seconds, like she wanted to say something, but changed her mind. Then she quickly said goodbye and left. That short visit was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. After that, we saw each other for different reasons. Sometimes to return a dish, sometimes on the stairs. Slowly, our talks became longer. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. And somewhere in those short conversations and long looks, I realized I was no longer just a neighbor. I had fallen in love with Lucy. One evening on the building's rooftop, I finally said, "Lucy, let's get married." She was silent. She didn't laugh, didn't look surprised. She just looked at me. A look that was more like sadness than doubt. She said, "It's not possible." I asked why. She lowered her head. A few seconds passed. "I can't leave this house." I said, "If there's a problem, we'll solve it together." She said quietly, "You don't know what's going on here, Michael." It was the first time I clearly heard fear in her voice. And at that moment, I understood. The real secret of this house had not yet been revealed to me. That night, Lucy talked about her past for the first time. We were sitting on the back stairs of the building where no one could see us. My mother had been married 3 times. My real father is a rich man. My mother left him for money and then married 2 other men. I didn't know this until I grew up. I thought Antoine was my father, but he's not. She paused and continued. My mother spent a lot of time with a woman. Her name was Madame Claude. People said she did strange things. I never understood why my mother went to her, until one day, her voice trembled. One day I saw my mother with Madame Claude in the room at the end of the hallway, that wooden door. They were reading things, and in the room, there was something. Madame Claude said its name was Shade. If I stayed away from my mother for even one night, Shade would come for me. Tears filled her eyes. I took her hand. "I'm here for you, Lucy. You don't have to carry your pain alone anymore. I'll get you a new house, a new city. You have to run away with me." As we were talking, a shadow appeared behind the yard door. Celine. She was standing at the top of the stairs, looking at us. Her gaze weighed heavily on Lucy. Without saying a word, Lucy pulled her hand away from mine and quietly walked toward the door. Celine was still standing there. A few moments later, she said quietly, "Truth is something that is neither seen nor heard. Only those who are in that situation understand it." And she left. A week passed. Celine didn't let Lucy talk to me. Every time we saw each other on the stairs, Lucy would just look at me and quickly go down. Until one day, I saw Lucy in the neighborhood. She was coming back from the bakery. I went closer and said quietly, "Lucy, we have to go. Tomorrow night, 11 o'clock, behind the building by the fire escape stairs." She looked at me. There was fear in her eyes, but she nodded. Yes. The next night, at 11, she was there. I took her hand and brought her out of that building. Paris was silent under the rain. Streetlights trembled in the water. She didn't look back, even once. We went to a small hotel on the edge of the city, a simple room with a window facing the backyard. I thought everything was over now. I had saved her. But from the moment we entered the room, I felt the room wasn't empty. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up. The room had become cold. Lucy wasn't beside me. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her back to me. Her hair covered her face. I called her, "Lucy?" She didn't answer. Then her shoulders started shaking, slowly at first, then faster. Suddenly, a laugh came from deep in her throat, a laugh that wasn't hers, a strange laugh that filled the whole room. I jumped up, went to her, grabbed her face. Her eyes had turned completely black, no pupils, just blackness. I screamed, "Lucy!" She spoke in a voice that wasn't hers. "You're late, Mother, too late." And then she screamed, a terrible scream, loud, like it was coming from deep inside a well, like 1,000 women screaming together. At that moment, the bedside lamp exploded. Glass scattered on the floor. Lucy fell. Her body became cold. Her breathing stopped and started. Her eyes were closed. I couldn't do anything. I just called her name. "Lucy, Lucy." A few minutes later, everything calmed down. She was breathing, but she was weak, like someone who had just woken up from a long illness. Morning came. Lucy didn't remember anything about that night. At noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. It was the police. They told me her mother, Celine, had died that night. Heart attack. Time of death? 3:30 in the morning. Exactly the same time Lucy had screamed in the hotel. When I told Lucy, she stared at the wall and said quietly, "My mother sacrificed herself." And from that day, Lucy and I left Paris. Years passed. Lucy and I got married. We went to Lyon, then Marseille, and finally to a small town in the south of France. Life was calm. That terrible night never repeated. Lucy never had that madness again. It was like with her mother's death, that cursed thing had left her forever. But I never forgot. 10 years later, I came to Paris for work. Lucy wasn't with me. I was staying in a small hotel near the old neighborhood. The second night, at 11 o'clock, someone knocked on the door. It was a boy. Around 12 years old, thin, with big eyes. He said, "Are you Monsieur Michael?" I said, "Yes." He held out a paper envelope. "They told me to give this to your wife. They said you must deliver it to her." I took the envelope. I asked, "Who sent it?" The boy shrugged. An old woman, in the old neighborhood, next to the building they tore down. She said her name is Madame Claude. The boy left. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, Celine's handwriting. The date, 10 years earlier, just a few days before that night. The letter said, "Dear Michael, if you are reading this, it means Lucy is with you and I am no longer here. And it means Madame Claude is still alive and hasn't forgotten her promise. I love my daughter more than anything, but the world doesn't understand love. Money destroyed everything. Lucy's real father was a man who did many bad things. He had a huge fortune that he wouldn't give us. Madame Claude wrote a prayer for me. Its name was Shade. Shade is not a spirit, it's a curse, a thing that breathes in darkness. Its condition was this: as long as I am alive, Lucy is safe. If Lucy stays away from me for even one night, Shade will come for her. I knew that sooner or later, someone would come and take her away. I knew you would come, Michael. From the first night I saw your eyes, I understood. The night Lucy left, she was supposed to die. So I went first. I took her place. Madame Claude had told me there was a way. If the mother dies before the daughter, Shade transfers to the mother. Tell Lucy her mother wasn't crazy. She just didn't know any other way. Take care of her, forever. Celine." I read the letter 3 times. The date at the bottom, October 12, 8 p.m. That night, Lucy had left the house at 11 p.m. The police said Celine's death was recorded at 10 p.m., 2 hours after she wrote this letter. So, Madame Claude had kept the letter for 10 years, until now, until she was sure Lucy was safe.
Inside the envelope, there was also a small photo, a woman with closed eyes. On the back of the photo was written, "Shade. Now it's mine, daughter." I folded the letter and put it in my bag. I went to the window. I looked at the Paris night. And for the first time in 10 years, I remembered that dark wooden door, that large metal lock, that sound of breathing from behind the door. Now I knew what was behind that door: Shade. And I knew why that night in the hotel, Lucy had screamed, "You're late, Mother!" Celine had been late, 1 hour late. But she made it. Now, every time I see Lucy in deep sleep, I bring my ear close to her lips, not to hear words, to make sure she's breathing, because maybe Shade has been waiting for another 10 years, for another 20 years, for a night when I'm not there. We never had children, not because we didn't want to, because I never spent a single night away from Lucy. I was afraid that if I wasn't beside her one night, maybe that night would be Lucy's last.
I hope you enjoyed the story. Please support us by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Sincerely, we are not alone.